I'm back to civilize you savages and to enhance your brain. But go ahead and break the glass because it's broken glass everywhere. True indeed, it's broken glass everywhere because I'm always coming with a message. I'm back with another book review, and this time I decided to switch it up to one of my favorite pastimes, the street authors and the street tales and the street novels. And this one was by one of our number one street philosophers, Goines. White man's justice, black man's grief. Let's kick it.
We've only just
Oh yes, indeed. I like this.
Let's get into this book, White Man's Justice, Black Man's Grief by Goines. We're gonna make this short, sweet, and with a whole lot of heat because I actually want you to go out and read the book, man. Go and check out one of our favorite street philosophers, Goines. Remember the perfection, right? But I got introduced to Goines when I was a very, very young man. My big brother and I used to hear some of his partners. They used to always debate about who had the best books, Goines or Iceberg Slim. And when I was a very, very young guy, my brother slipped not this book, but a couple of other ones of Goines. He slipped those to me, and I always remember those. And fast forward, I got reintroduced to Goines by the movie Never Die Alone. When I was in the Navy, true indeed, the God was in the Navy. Right. But when I was in the Navy, while we was on deployment, I think this was 2002. Either 2002 or 2004. But the DVD of Never Die Alone was out. And I can remember watching this on the ship. And I was with the people like me. You know what I'm saying? The people who kicked up dust. And we used to take over the big TV, and we used to watch whatever we wanted to watch. And also, that's when the portable DVD players had came out, and that was a big thing when in the early 2000s when I was in the Navy, right? So we used to pass that DVD around, Never Die Alone. That was a cold movie, and it starred, Remember the Perfection, DMX. Boy, that was a cold movie, Never Die Alone, right? So that's how I got reintroduced to Goines. And later on, when I got back on my reading thing, I picked up a couple different books by Goines, and this one was one of the ones that I picked up, man, and I'm finna freestyle to y'all about, because this ain't nothing but a freestyle worth your while. You know what I'm saying? Look, I read this book probably about 5 or 6 times because this is a very, very interesting book, right? And like I said, people used to always talk about who had the best books, Goines or Iceberg Slim. I actually believe that Goines actually had the better books. I also, fast forward, got reintroduced to Goines through a DVD. Back in the DVD era, it was a DVD called Donnie's Story, right? And I think they had a couple of his family members, maybe one of his ex-wives or something. And they was talking about, basically a biography, gave a biography of Goines. And I had that DVD for a few years, so that's how I got reintroduced to Goines. But this particular book, White Man's Justice, Black Man's Grief, it was a lot of different characters. It was Chester Hines. He was the main character, right? And then you had Irene, Irene and Marie, they go together, right? Check this out, right? This probably, on this date, my mother's name was Marie. And my mother passed away about 40 days ago. We had a funeral about 40 days ago. So that's when I remember that Irene and Marie, they go together. But Marie was never she didn't really have a space in this book because of what happened to her. And Irene is a part of that, right? And then you had Willie, which was his cellie, his prison partner. He had Larry, Tommy, Raymond, Gene with a G, right? Boy, they did him wrong in Tony, Tommy, Preacher, Jug was like out of BC. You remember the TV show Oz on HBO in the 90s? Jug, to me, looked like out of BC. I visualized him being like out of BC from Oz on HBO. You had David, Ed Duke, and Gene. That was a package. They went together, and Gene with a J, and then you had Albert. Those were most of the characters, right? Now the name of this book is White Man's Justice, Black Man's Grief, but it was only a few instances where they actually correlated that with the title. Most of this shit was some jail shit. This book was, like I said, like a movie, man. It was a strange mix, man, of the HBO TV show series Oz, mixed with the Master P movie Lockdown, mixed with Dead Presidents, mixed with Life with Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy, and Fleece Johnson, the booty bandit. So it was kind of like mixed with all those, and I know this book was written way before all of those shows and movies came out, so I'm pretty sure they probably got a lot of that content from this book, White Man's Justice, Black Man's Grief, right? Jail angle in this book was very, very graphic. It was very, very homoerotic with a bunch of that type of innuendo and all of that going on in jail, and taking manhood, like the R word that they tell us not to use on YouTube. A lot of that taking folks' manhood was going on in there. Man, they was having freak shows and prison threesomes and prison relationships and marriages, and somebody got killed for one of them type of relationships later on in the book. Yo, man, it was very, very graphic, and that's how you could tell the brother hadn't been in probably that environment, because this was all the books that I've ever written by people who did a lot of time in prison. They very, very graphic when it comes to the sexual things. I'm being for real, man. They very, very graphic, boy. Their imagination is way out there, right? But yeah, man, they had freak shows and threesomes, and check this out, right? They did Gene with a G, cause it was two Genes in the book. Gene with a G, Gene with a G. They told this fool to go to the shower. Well, they told this fool to come over there and kick it with them on their side. So everybody had to get in the shower. When this fool got in the shower, they ran up in Gene, like they ran like the prison mandingos. They ran up in Gene, man. Like you like. I think Gene was in there saying, "Man, you busting me open" or something like that, and all this and that, man. It was crazy how they did Gene with a G, Gene with a J. She went with the David, Ed, and Duke situation, right? Gene with a J was a white woman. When you talk about White Man's Justice, Black Man's Grief, she was a pass around, a freak, right? So she the fellas was going to get some alcohol and all this and that, man, and then they bump into Gene, and they get to doing in the car. David in there asleep, and Gene basically told one of the dudes his dick was little, and what I think who got it there, Duke got in there next, and Duke was laying it on her, and she was calling the Duke a good nigger and all all that old freaky shit, man. Them white women be saying, I ain't never been with one, I ain't never been this close to one, on everything I love, but that shit, man, we be hearing about how white girls do it. But anyway, the police pull up, and and break that party up. One of the brothers took off running, get shot in the back. David still asleep. Jean started acting like she got raped or whatever, and that's how David because it was a shootout with the police and just all type of shit, right? And no, it wasn't no shootout. He took out running through the alley and the police shot him. The other one, he didn't run, and then David was still asleep, so they end up with a case. And that's how the Gene with a J came about, right? But this movie really is about, and check this out, they had this dude in her name, Jug. Jug was just like out of BC. You remember on HBO, man, that movie, from that TV show, Jug was like out of BC. Jug ended up getting killed later on in the movie, unalived. He get killed, he get unalived, and later on in the book, right? With all of that freaky stuff going on, I even thought Chester and Willie was finna come out and be together, cause some old weird stuff. Chester said, you scaring people with all that big meat, big dick swinging, or something to that effect. And Willie was like, he was enamored and happy that Chester, acknowledged how big his thing was in front of some other men. So like I said, it was all type of freaky stuff like that going on in the book, man. This book really is about Chester Hines. Chester Hines is the main character of the book. Chester gets pulled over, right? But I really want you to read the book, so I'm gonna make it short and sweet. Chester gets pulled over. He had a gun. Chester ends up going to jail. Chester meets Willie. We started to find out about Chester's past. He was I guess you want to say the ordinary street guy of that time. Check this out, right? There was something else funny in this book, man. They said they called a so-called color man a Ofe. Man, you know what an Ofe is? Man, I just love that old school that jargon, man. But Chester, what we find out, he unalived, because we can't say killed and all that. I just said it, but he unalived, I think about 4 people in here, man, if I ain't mistaken, throughout his past. Like I said, the Irene and Marie thing, I think he wasn't even married to Marie but 2 weeks. And like I said, my mother just passed away 45 days ago, man, and her name was Marie. That's weird. But Marie, because he was getting egged on by Irene, so he killed him. He unalived her after being married for only 2 weeks. Somebody tried to take his manhood when he escaped on some kind of train box, like at the train station, like in the old school movies, and people used to hop on trains or whatever to get where they wanted to go. And a black dude, he ended up getting in one or hopping on one, and a black dude tried to, tried to take his manhood. He killed him. He unalived him and threw him off the train. And there was a couple other people in here that he unalived, but he used to have dreams in prison about his ex-wife and his new wife, right? So he meets Willie. Him and Willie Sellies, and they partners, they prison partners. And they're just going through the journey of what happens when you go to jail, right? But it has a weird twist coming toward the end, right? Remember when I said it's a strange mix of dead presidents mixed in there with that, right? So when it's time for Willie to get out, they had this conversation, and Albert was around, right? Albert was a lifer. Albert overheard or got into a conversation when Willie was asking Chester about this food stamp office, right? And how much money they had. So the scene sets up like the dead president scene. Willie gets out, but Chester telling him don't do it. But he also telling him don't be talking like that around Albert. Right? So he tells him to stop talking like that around Albert about the lick y'all and the heist that you wanted to pull off, right? Willie ends up getting a short amount of time, and when he got out of jail, he assembled his team, right? Chester ends up seeing it on the news what had happened. Willie and them tried to pull off this lick, man, and they had a shootout with the police just like in Dead Presidents, right? Willie ends up telling on Chester. Him and Chester was partners. Like they was real partners, and like they was sillies. And like I said, I thought they was gonna come out and be together later on in the book or whatever. But Willie snitches on Chester about being a mastermind. But Albert also corroborated the story because he was a lifer and he was trying to get some kind of credit, to help him get out of prison. Right? So that's the Dead President's angle of this book. And it kind of reads like that. Like I said, it reads from the time of Chester going from the county jail all the way going to prison. And I think, man, Chester only had like a couple weeks or a couple of months before he caught a mastermind charge. They actually gave him a mastermind charge from in prison from what Willie did, right? I could just envision that scene in this book of being like the Dead President scene when he had Cleon and them, and you know what I'm saying, that type of thing. That what was going on. That was the main thing at the end of the book, right? So this book was very, very informative if you like jail stories, right? But the white man's justice, black man's grief, it's only a few instances that actually went on, probably about 4 or 5. And it was also, you got to think about what was going on during that paradigm and that time frame, in the so-called United States of America or whatever. And I think this was in Detroit. True indeed. This was a very, very good book though. Like I said, this shit falling apart. I got highlighted parts all in the book. For real though. But when I read it the first time, I just breezed through it. You know what I'm saying? And now I understand what was going on in the book. Like I said, this wasn't nothing but a freestyle worth your while, off the top of the dome. What did I learn from this book? Don't go to jail. But some of the characters in this book, like Jug, man. Jug was wild, man. Jug in this book was wild. Man, they was doing threesomes. They was having prison orgies and freak shows all in the prison, man. And they was calling prison liquor hooch. They was calling that squid juice. You know what I'm saying? And they would get that squid juice and they packs of cigarettes, and that's how they would get down, at that time in jail. I can kind of see how other people probably read this book and they incorporated a lot that was going on in this book into those movies. Like I said, that Lockdown with Master P, the Dead Presidents, The Life, the American Me, those type of movies. I can see how they got some of that game from this book. Like I said, man, it was a lot going on in this book, but it was the layering of the main character, that stood out to me about this book. And the fact that I've read a couple of Donnie Goines books, and I saw that movie Never Die Alone with DMX. It was a very, very good author, man. It was a very, very good author. So that was the contest. Who had the better books, Iceberg Slim or Donnie Goines? You know what I'm saying? And to me, I think Donnie Goines had the better books. That's just on how I get down. Would I recommend this book? Yeah, man, add this book to your collection, man. Donnie Goines, White Man's Justice, Black Man's Grief. I got this book. I don't remember where I got this copy, but I think I got this copy from Homeland Village in Macon, Georgia, 2910 Napier Avenue. You know, that's one of my favorite spots, Homeland Village. But Donnie Goines, White Man's Justice, add that to your collection. I highly recommend that, and it probably won't take you but a day and a half to read the book, you know, just because it got very short pages, you know, and you can read it a couple different times so you can get, you know, familiar with the character and actually know what's going on within this book, because there was a lot of little nuanced things, nuances. See that big word by the guard? But that there were a lot of different things and a lot of different layers and nuances going on with the character Chester Hines in this book, White Man's Justice, Black Man's Grief. I highly recommend it. Go and get some game about yourself, man. Go back to the old school, get familiar with the old school jargon in the old school language. See how our people was talking way back in the days. You know, that's why I read books, man, to see what was going on. Sometimes books are a timestamp of what was going on in the author's head by what he was seeing through his optics of his environment. You see how I put that together? But yo, check it out. White Man's Justice, Black Man's Grief by Donnie Goines. This the bearded Heru, and yo, check this out, right? See this old school shirt? Conscious. The people who made this shirt, I heard they was some scammers, but they was cool when I met them. And this is the golden Heru. True indeed, that's the golden Heru. How you like me now? You know what I'm saying? You see how I put that together? Yo, this the bearded Heru. Yo, go check them other videos out. Them some cold pieces. Come on and like and subscribe so you can vibe with your guy. This the bearded Heru. Yo, everything is real. Peace.
We've only just
Oh yes, indeed. I like this.